The Dallas Cowboys are starting to wrap up their defensive coordinator search, and there's three interesting names that you need to know.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're taking a look at three under-the-radar candidates that the Cowboys have either requested to interview or have already interviewed for their defensive coordinator job opening. We're going to talk about Charlie Bullen. We're going to talk about DeMarcus Covington. But let's talk about the name that probably excites me the most out of this group, and that is Christian Parker. Landon, for the fans at home, can you explain where his background, what he does as a defensive mind, and what it would look like here in Dallas?
Well, unfortunately, what he does now is that he's a coach for the Eagles, which
Correct.
is a bad thing as far as a personality choice, kind of person that you are. That you go
exactly. I mean, my goodness.
But it does bode well
if you're
yeah, exactly right. It does bode well if you're a defensive back coach who's been around the last 2 years, because he's worked under Fangio these last 2 years. These defenses of the Eagles have been incredible, and specifically. The young corners of the Eagles drafted end up Quinyon Mitchell and I'm blanking on the Cooper DeJean. They both came in and look, both of those guys were very highly thought of prospects, certainly. But the fact that they came in and hit the ground running in a way that most young rookies certainly don't at that position, I think is a pretty good indication of the job that Christian Parker has done with the Eagles. And his time before the Eagles, he was with Denver. And he was he was part of the team that kind of helped Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons ended up in the Pro Bowl and all pro levels. I'm pretty sure that he was the defensive secondary coach when Simmons ended up with like 11 picks 2 years ago. So he was part in the 2022 campaign back with Denver. He helped guide a secondary that finished 7th in NFL in yards allowed per game, only 320. So obviously. We've seen how Denver's defense has been these last 4 years that he's been there. Obviously, he's not the only part of that. Fangio has a lot to do with it. But the fact that he served under two highly thought defensive coordinators and did a specifically great job with that while serving under them, I think it bodes well for him coming in here and at the very least being an extremely solid passing game coordinator, defensive coordinator, but maybe he's ready for the big time to be the defensive coordinator.
One of the things that at least I'm noticing, and I'm sure a lot of people are as well, is that they're interviewing a lot of secondary guys that have,
Yes.
focus in the secondary in coverage, whether that's Jonathan Gannon, Jim Leonard, and now with Parker. I would have to assume that they're wanting somebody on the back end that can teach these, some of these young corners, can develop these guys and play some different coverages. I think they feel like they have enough talent on the defensive line. They probably need one more edge rusher, but it's the back end that needs the most work. And if they can fix that part of their defense, they feel probably pretty good that they can at least get to an average level.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the strategy that we prescribed, right? Is that it feels like it's probably a safer route to go try to improve your defensive line and your linebacker room through the draft, and then maybe get some veteran corners potentially, or some corners that you feel like that are heady and can come in and play, right away, and then go and try to solve make the defensive line a talented group, and then solve the back end with a collection of veteran talent and a defensive coordinator that can help scheme it up. Because, we talked about the fact that the defensive backfield is very much a weak link system. So if you can just kind of raise the floor all around it and then kind of cover up any holes that you have maybe with scheme, I think that's a much quicker formula for getting the defense where it needs to be than trying to work the other way around and build only through talent and potentially specifically up front.
The other thing that I'm noticing, it's a lot of a lot of like Denver stuff, like what Vance Joseph and the Broncos are doing now. Like I think they just want to be part of that tree. It doesn't seem like they've interviewed a lot of guys that are like heavy blitz guys or super exotic with their pass rush stuff. I mean, we'll see if they interview Brian Flores, and Zach Orr does some of that. But again, it's a lot of smart things on the back end, and we're going to be pretty static on the front end.
Yeah, we'll talk about Charlie Bullen next, but he's also a Vance Joseph guy, right? And I think probably likes to get off after the quarterback a little bit. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly guys you've seen that are aggressive up front guys, or like you said, defensive backfield coaches that are scheme heavy guys that know how to communicate to their. I mean, look, the Eagles do a lot of this kind of quarters Fangio defense stuff, and it takes a lot of communication with your defensive backs to have them understand all the rules that have to be in place to kind of run those schemes, cover 6 and cover, 8 and stuff like that. So you really need to find a way to have a good communicator in the back end if you're going to kind of stabilize the coverage situation, because a lot of it is about not only the communication that needs to go on between the defensive backs themselves, but you communicating to the defensive backs throughout practice the actual rules and the structure of how to play these coverages.
Now, I love that they're interviewing younger coaches. Parker is only 34 years old. So, I mean, I guess it's young for a coach. It's not young for a podcaster, I assume. But he's only been a coach in the NFL since 2019. And the first couple of years of his career, he was a defensive quality control coach, which a lot of times is just like watching film and putting together packets. He's been a defensive back coach or a passing game coordinator only since 2021. So this is a pretty big step to go from a passing game coordinator to a defensive coordinator on the biggest stage with the Cowboys. I don't mind it. I don't mind them taking risks on, coaches like this, but it is definitely a risk.
Well, considering what we talked about these last few days about the age of some of these draft prospects that are coming out, I mean, he was coaching in Texas A&M in 2018. There's possibility that he's got some guys that he recruited,
or at least recruited guys.
Yeah, at least recruited. So, yeah, I mean, I do think it's, look, we talked about the idea of, Shoddy and the way he approached building this offensive staff. And a lot of it was about not necessarily, only college coaches, but getting coaches that could communicate, that were good teachers, that were good at interacting with the players and relating to the players so that they can understand the scheme. And I think you look at Parker, you listen to the people that are tapped into the league that know folks, his name comes up a lot. I mean, I heard it on the Athletic Football podcast today. They were talking about it. It's just the top assistants that could be going around in the interviewing process. He's been a name that's been on radars for a little while. It's good to see him kind of get some interviews, and it's really good to see the Cowboys recognize that and bring him in as well.
It's just that fine line of, do you try to get a guy 1 or 2 years early so you beat the rest of the league out for him, or do you go after a more proven name who's been around for a while? Like a Jonathan Gannon, right? Somebody who's coached for a while. He's likely just taking a defensive coordinator job. What's the best strategy? I don't know. But what I do like here, Landon, is that it's not. This doesn't feel like a rushed process when they hired Matt Eberflus, right? Where it was basically announced that same night that they hired Brian Schottenheimer. They're going to interview like 10 to 12 different names here. They're going to have second round of interviews. I like this process, even if it doesn't lead to necessarily a better hire. I like this process so much better.
I think it will lead to a better hire, but agreed. On its face, you love the way that they're approaching this. And again, I think it just makes sense to do it this way. I mean, even if you're not hiring Parker, or even if you don't plan on Parker, just to kind of get some of these younger guys in here and pick their brain, I think that has value in itself for the Cowboys.
All right, let's talk about an older coaching candidate, all the way at age 36, DeMarcus Covington. I know, it's crazy. I love how young they're going here. What could he potentially provide the Cowboys this year? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate QB. Have you ever wished that you could become a pro quarterback, getting drafted first overall by your favorite team? Well, now you can, and there's a mobile game just for you called Ultimate QB Football Legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick quarterback, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one quarterback career mode game on the market right now, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You'll deal with the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, has no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect for when you want to just sneak in a game or two on the go. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. And we've got something special for you guys. Use the promo code LOCKEDON in the game's store to get a free boost at the start of your career. Ultimate QB, football legend, QB1, it's your legacy. This episode is brought to you by Home Chef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is always a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated number one by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule, 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches, and over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. So for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box with free shipping and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national YouTube channel as well. So go check that out. Landon, let's talk about DeMarcus Covington. This is another guy that the Cowboys have requested to interview. He is currently the Packers defensive line coach and the run game coordinator. And if you saw that Packers defense in the final 5 games of the season, this might not be your guy. However, he's got a pretty impressive resume.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like, this is another guy that, definitely has an influence, definitely has spent long stretches with different teams. I mean, he's only been with the Packers this year, but before that, he spent 7 years with the New England Patriots. And last, in 2024, he was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots. And it didn't go well, to be clear. I mean, a lot of that had to do with the fact that the Patriots weren't very good last year, right? They come into this offseason and they spend, a crazy amount of free agent money because they had all that cap, right? And they turn their franchise around a little bit with getting a young quarterback, which doesn't help on the defense side, but at least changes the lift that you're being asked to do on your defense. I will add, though, despite it being not necessarily like a bottom third of the NFL by a defensive EPA per snap basis, they did play man coverage at the 3rd highest rate in the NFL, which I think does show you that he has an open-mindedness to kind of play a bunch of different schemes. He's not, again, especially coming from Eberflus, that's kind of a number that we're looking at now is, are they going to play a bunch of zone coverage only? And it did look like the stuff he's doing is at least interesting. So, it's hard not to spend so much time in New England, especially under Parcells, and kind of not have some defense. Yeah. I'm sorry, Belichick, and not have some of that kind of rub off on you a little bit. And listen, for Belichick, some of the Parcells to rub off on him, right? But yeah, I think that there is something to that, and I think that experience is valuable. But it is very kind of up and down. And again, like you mentioned, you watch what happened at the end of the year for the Packers. And it wasn't great. Obviously, they were missing Parsons, but I think you would have liked to seen some of these other guys kind of step up a little bit in the pass rush when Parsons was gone. Gary and Van Ness and some of those other guys.
I just have a hard time judging a coach based on what a defense does if they're not calling plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's a
sure.
little hard that way. And this Packers defense was really held together by Micah Parsons. Like they really fell off once he was gone, just like almost every defense does when Micah Parsons isn't there. So what's interesting to me is the background. Like he worked under Bill Belichick, but he also worked side by side with Brian Flores in New England. He was the defensive assistant, but he was really working with Flores. And then when Flores left for the Miami head coaching job, we saw DeMarcus Covington take over that same role that Flores was operating. So is this going to be more of a Bill Belichick style of defense? Is it a more of a Brian Flores? Because those are two totally different things where, Belichick is he's very multiple, where you're going to see Flores be very aggressive and play more man coverage on the back end. I don't know. We honestly don't know. And the other thing that's really interesting about Covington is he's a former receiver who made the switch to defense. So it's not like he's been on that side of his ball, the side of the ball his whole life. I'm not saying that he can't coach defense. It's just, it's fascinating. You don't see that flipping back and forth very often.
Yeah, I mean, you see some of these coaches come in with very odd experiences, but yeah, flipping sides of the ball, that is kind of always a weird one to watch out. And I think to me, it feels more common to go the other way to
Correct.
me, but I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it is interesting to see, that kind of experience. And I wonder how it kind of filters through his experience as a defensive coach.
Well, and I wonder with this Green Bay situation, because Jeff Hafley is currently the defensive coordinator there.
Yeah.
He's been getting a bunch of head coaching opportunities. And I would not be surprised at all, given how many jobs they have open right now, that he gets one. And if the Packers go out and hire a new defensive coordinator, maybe Covington is somebody that could end up moving or going somewhere else. And maybe you bring him in as a run game coordinator if you hire, somebody, Parker to run your defense, because his specialty is on the back end. I honestly, I don't know, but this is it. This is an interesting interview that I did not think the Cowboys were going to make.
Yeah, this is why I think, people sometimes get confused about what these interviews probably look like. But I think that they're more open-ended conversations about football and about what your team did and what my team did, as opposed to specific conversations, at least early on, about the job that's being offered, because guys like this, they could be interviewing for multiple different
jobs, never know,
right? You never know. So, and even if you liked him as a defensive coordinator candidate, maybe you like somebody else a little bit more that you ended up getting. You would view this as a home run to be able to get him if you liked him that much to be your outside linebackers coach. And obviously the same thing for Parker as a defensive back coach. So he's he can't really go because that would be a parallel move. But I think it's these interviews are all being multi-purpose, right? Like we talked about this. It's not just about going to find a defensive coordinator. It's about picking your brain about what you guys did over there and maybe other candidates that they're interviewing. So there's lots of information that they get on these things.
And the other thing we should mention is, if the Cowboys nail this hire, hopefully you're not having to search for a defensive coordinator for 4 or 5 years, right? But that also means that you're not going to be able to talk to a lot of these coaches because they're going to be under contract somewhere else. And you can't really interview, a defensive line coach if he's under contract in Green Bay for your open job as a defensive line. So this is a good time to take your time and interview a bunch of names, because maybe he's not the right guy right now, but maybe 2 years from now, Green Bay moves on from that whole staff and he's available, and you would love to scoop him up for your defensive line coach. I just think it does not hurt to cast a really wide net here. And maybe somebody blows you away in an interview and you leave that interview thinking, we have no choice but to hire this guy. That's happened before. Again, I'll use a quick story. I mean, Mike Tomlin was not going to get the Pittsburgh job back in 2006 or 7. He was the defensive coordinator on a 6-10 Minnesota team. He walked into that interview. They knew right away. You just never know.
I mean, that's pretty much what happened with Shoddy, right?
Yeah.
Shoddy just walked into that interview and blew the Joneses away. And now, it's an exit interview turns into an offensive coordinator interview turns into a head coach interview, right? I think especially with these young coaches, it's super important to get them in the room to find out the cut of their jib or what they believe in. And because like you said, you don't always have the opportunity to talk to these guys. And look, Schottenheimer, besides getting his job that way, talked about how all of these guys that he brought in, Clayton Adams and all these guys, these were all guys that weren't necessarily guys that worked with him. I mean, some of them did, but most of them are references of references, right? And just knowing guys, knowing it's a who you know game to be in the front office and
that's why it doesn't hurt to talk to more people, right?
Absolutely. Networking is important, just like you're in Hollywood, for goodness sakes.
There you go. Let's talk about one more name. Again, we're working way up the ladder to a 41-year-old coach. Oh, my goodness, that seems old. Charlie Bullen. Could he be the next defensive coordinator? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. We are in the NFL playoffs. The divisional round is going to be amazing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium just hits different. The frustrating part is always trying to get those tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching the prices change right at checkout. But that's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up the Game Time app because one of my friends is in Denver. They invited me to go to this Denver-Buffalo game. Don't think I'm going to be able to make it, but I was wanting to see what the tickets were going to be like because I think that game is going to be incredible. Found some amazing deals right away. The app is so easy to use. I love that you're going to get the all-in pricing. Plus, you can see the view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That is LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The divisional round of the playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. And each day, you're going to see multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like. Like I think Denver's going to win. They've had 13 days to get ready for this game against Buffalo. Buffalo's down to like 3 healthy receivers. I love Denver, and now I can take that profit boost and get an even bigger payout on FanDuel while the playoffs are rolling. So visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are discussing under the radar candidates for the Cowboys defensive coordinator job. And let's talk about the last one, Charlie Bullen, who apparently has a lot of supporters in that Giants building. I know there's a lot of people that want Bullen to stay on as the interim or the defensive coordinator. He is currently the interim defensive coordinator. Why do you think the Cowboys are interested here?
I mean, they probably saw the improvement that was made by him once he took over the interim defensive coordinator job. I mean, they went from being kind of a disappointing defense. I mean, look, there weren't a ton of high expectations for the New York Giants this year, but one side of the ball, there was some expectations for his defense, right? They had 3 young, talented pass rushers. They have a couple different pieces kind of sprinkled out throughout the secondary and a couple spots, right? Enough that you thought that maybe they could be a little bit interesting while their young offense was kind of trying to figure itself out a little bit. And that just wasn't the case early on. It didn't look like things. Andre Carter looked like a disaster early on. Thibodeau still wasn't quite being what you needed him to be. Brian Burns was really the only part of that defense that felt like it was fully kind of evolved and being unleashed in the way that he should have, right? And then suddenly you see, the fire the defense coordinator, you see Bullen take over, and the defense starts to play a lot better. I think the thing that fascinates me the most about Bullen is the kind of coaching tree aspect and the intersection that he has, right? We'll talk about some of the latter day stuff, but it was really interesting for me to kind of deep dive into this and find out that he worked for Vance Joseph in 2016 when Vance Joseph was in Miami, right? And then he stayed on with Miami after Joseph left to become the head coach of Arizona. And then joined him in Arizona he became the head coach in Denver. Joseph went off to become a head coach, and then he joined Joseph in Arizona from 2019 to 2022, and then he also, separate of that, has experience working with Jim Leonhard at the University of Illinois. So and also beyond that, just to kind of go the connection route for the Cowboys, he played high school football with Scott Tolzien, who was the Cowboys quarterback coach when Kellen Moore was here. So yeah, I think lots of intersection. We just talked about how it's about who you know, right? But for a guy like this, he's had some interesting experience with some really good coaches. Really, that was, Kafka kind of gave him his first opportunity to kind of get out there and really be a defensive coordinator. And I think for the most part, it was pretty much a success, considering, the way things were trending when he took over the job.
I know there are a lot of Giants fans that would like to see him stay, but I think they want to give John Harbaugh, who's the new head coach there, his choice to bring in whoever he wants. We heard maybe Jim Leonhard, maybe Anthony Weaver. But I don't know. This is another one where I kind of can't see it, but it doesn't hurt to talk to a division rival defensive coordinator who you played in week 18 and ask him some questions about, hey, what did you guys think about our offense? What did you think about our team? It's also interesting that he's a former quarterback who is now a defensive guy. That part is very intriguing to me.
Yeah. And again, like another kind of unique situation in how he got there to his defensive coaching job was obviously through the offense. I think the thing that again, that he kind of is similar to some of these other guys is that, let's say New York decides to hire Weaver, like we talked about, right? If the Cowboys end up getting Jim Leonhard, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Charlie Bullen ends up with the Cowboys as some sort of top outside linebacker or pass rusher specialist or something like that, because again, the experience there. So yeah, and I think again, and also separately, his experience with Vance Joseph, maybe he would be a little bit more familiar with the kind of aspects of Vance Joseph that Leonhard may be interested in kind of sewing into a potential Cowboys defense. So multi-purpose interviews. That's the kind of theme of these guys, right? And I think it's, again, smart team building, not predetermining who you're hiring. Actually going out and doing the work is important.
Again, the most important part is they're interviewing these guys as defensive coordinator candidates, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the job that they are actually looking to hire these guys for. And you're right. Like, if Bullen becomes available because Anthony Weaver takes that job, I got to believe that that's going to be one of the top targets for the Cowboys if they were to hire someone like Jim Leonhard. So really fascinating group of guys between Parker, Covington, and Bullen. We'll see if any of them end up in Dallas. But that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the Everydayer Club ad-free episodes of the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast for your second listen of the day. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.